It began with a whisper inside Windsor Castle. One late-night command that should have tightened Queen Camilla's grip on power, but instead cracked open under the glow of the castle's moonlit windows. Kate Middleton walked into a meeting meant to intimidate her. What Camilla didn't expect was that Kate would walk out with the entire balance of the monarchy quietly shifting in her favor. Because sometimes the strongest move isn't made in the spotlight. It's made in the shadows, when the palace guards aren't even looking. If you enjoy deeper, behind-the-curtain royal stories like this, go ahead and tap like. It really helps. And if you're new here, subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in this unfolding royal drama. Feel free to share this video with someone who loves a good palace twist. The halls of Windsor Castle have seen centuries of secrets, but that night they held their breath. Even the royal guards, usually stoic, unmoving, almost statues carved from discipline, shifted subtly as Catherine, Princess of Wales, walked past them, not because she demanded attention, but because the atmosphere around her felt different, tighter, sharper, as if the walls themselves sensed that something unusual was about to unfold. It had begun less than an hour earlier when a palace aide delivered a handwritten note, not typed, not sent through the usual channels. Just a thin ivory card that felt heavier than it looked, sealed with a single letter, C. The message was chilling in its simplicity. My study. Midnight. Come alone. Kate had read it twice, her fingers pausing over the edges. The clock beside her blinked 11:40. There was no time to debate, no option to ignore it. Everyone in the royal system knew that late-night summonses were rare, and when they did happen, they were never benign. They carried weight, unspoken rules, consequences. As she walked through the East Gallery, moonlight spilled across the marble floor like silver paint. Her gown, soft silk, understated, glimmered with each step, but beneath the elegance, her heartbeat hammered like a distant drum. Royal life taught you to smile through storms, but the storm felt personal, because she already knew what the meeting was about. 3 nights earlier, at a charity gala filled with glittering donors and flashing cameras, the world had caught something the palace wished it hadn't. Camilla had leaned toward Kate during a conversation, whispered something too low for microphones to catch, and Kate's expression had shifted, just a flicker, a startled tightening, a moment of disbelief. It lasted half a second, but it was enough. Enough for body language experts to dissect. Enough for tabloids to explode. Enough for the world to ask, what did Camilla say? Kate had said nothing publicly. She had smiled and moved on. But silence in the royal world was gasoline, and by morning the fire was everywhere. Now, as she neared the Queen Consort's private study, Kate felt the weight of that tiny moment pressing on her shoulders. A single royal guard stood outside the door. He didn't move, but his eyes flicked toward her with the slightest hint of concern. Something guards were trained never to show. "Ma'am," he murmured quietly, opening the door for her. Inside, the room was darker than expected. Only one lamp glowed on the polished mahogany desk, throwing long shadows across the shelves lined with history and power. Queen Camilla sat behind the desk in an emerald dressing gown, her posture impeccable, her gaze sharp enough to cut glass. She did not stand. She did not smile. "Close the door," Camilla said softly. Kate obeyed, the latch clicked behind her, echoing like a hammer in a cathedral. "Sit." Kate remained standing. "I prefer not to," she answered calmly. A tiny pause, a tightening around Camilla's mouth. The air felt colder. For a few long seconds, both women stood perfectly still, one asserting authority, the other refusing to yield to it. It was silent, but not calm. It was a kind of silence where decisions are made, alliances tested, and boundaries redrawn. Finally, Camilla leaned forward, folded her hands on the desk. "You've made things very difficult this week," she began, her tone deceptively smooth. "The incident at the gala has become a problem. People are talking. The press is becoming intrusive. The king is worried." Kate didn't respond. Her years in the palace had taught her that sometimes silence was the only shield you had. "You didn't defend me," Camilla continued. "You let the world assume the worst. You let them question my position, my authority. There was the real agenda, not truth, not clarity. Control. Kate inhaled slowly. I didn't say anything at all. Exactly. Camilla's smile was thin, icy. And silence could be very dangerous, Catherine. The way she said it, sharp, pointed, felt like a warning wrapped in courtesy. Kate took a single step closer. Or very honest. Camilla blinked. Just once. But it broke the Queen's mask long enough for Kate to see the flicker of surprise beneath it. A small victory, but a victory nonetheless. You are playing a risky game, Camilla said. I'm not playing anything, Kate replied. I'm simply refusing to take responsibility for speculation I didn't create. The Queen Consort's jaw tightened. People believe what they're shown, and what they saw was you undermining me. What they saw, Kate said softly, was a moment that made them question things. I didn't force that moment. I just lived it. A pause. Heavy. Dense. The kind of pause that changes the temperature of a room. Camilla's voice dropped. You will apologize. Publicly or privately. I don't care which. But you will do it. Kate felt something shift inside her. Not anger, not fear, but clarity. The kind that comes only when a line has been crossed. No, she said. Camilla stared at her, stunned. Excuse me? No, Kate repeated. And if you ever summon me again at midnight with threats disguised as etiquette, she leaned in, her voice calm, controlled, deadly precise. You will discover I am far more difficult to intimidate than you think. Time froze. Even the lamplight seemed to dim. For a heartbeat, Camilla looked genuinely shaken. Then fury ignited in her expression. We are not finished, she hissed. Kate walked toward the door, each step steady, each breath clearer than the last. Yes, she said quietly as she placed her hand on the handle. We are. And with that, she left. The royal guard outside quickly stepped aside as she emerged, his eyes widening at the tension radiating from both the princess and the room behind her. Kate's heels clicked sharply down the corridor, echoing like a victory march she hadn't planned. But the weight of what she had done, defying the Queen Consort, settled heavily against her ribs. She knew palace politics. She knew this wouldn't end in that room. Walls had ears. Curtains had loyalties. And tonight, she had crossed a line few dared cross. Yet for the first time, she felt something powerful bloom inside her. Not rebellion. Not anger. Authority. Her own. At 12:07 a.m., before she even reached her private chambers, her phone vibrated. 12 missed calls. All from the same palace number. A storm was already forming. She could feel it, but she kept walking. Not faster. Not slower. Just steady, like someone who had finally realized she did not need permission to stand tall. She closed her door behind her and let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for years. The room was quiet. The palace was not. And the monarchy, though it didn't know it yet, had just shifted. Kate barely slept. The palace walls might have been ancient stone, but rumors traveled through them like wind through cracks. She had expected silence after the confrontation, at least for a few hours. Instead, the storm arrived before dawn. By the time the first thin gray light crept over London, her phone was buzzing again. 12 missed calls had turned into 19, then 23, all from one number, the king's private office. The palace machine was awake, and Kate knew it was already spinning. She stood at her window overlooking the gardens, her hands wrapped loosely around a mug of untouched tea. The sky was shifting from dark blue to something softer, quieter. Birds were beginning to stir. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the peace outside was a lie. Just a thin veil over the chaos she had ignited inside the palace. She didn't regret what she said, but she understood the consequences. Every royal move was recorded somewhere, not officially, perhaps, but through whispers, through loyalties disguised as courtesies, through guards who heard everything but said nothing, through aides who carried messages, and through aides who carried gossip. And Camilla? Camilla would not let last night go quietly. She would turn it into a battle. Kate felt it in her bones. Her phone vibrated again. This time, the name on the screen made her exhale with relief. William. She answered immediately. Where are you? William asked, his voice low, tense, as though he had started talking before the call even connected. In my room, She said, "Are you home?" "Just arrived. Father's office called me at 5 a.m. They want us both at Buckingham this morning." He paused. "Kate, what happened?" She hesitated, not because she didn't trust him, but because repeating the events made them feel heavier, more real. "She summoned me," Kate said finally, "at midnight, alone." William exhaled sharply, almost angrily. "Why? What did she say?" Kate closed her eyes. "She wanted me to apologize for the video, for the speculation. She blamed me for how the public reacted. And when I didn't, she tried to intimidate me." Silence, the kind that holds too much in it. "What did you say back?" William asked quietly. Kate swallowed. "I told her the truth. And I told her if she ever tried something like that again," she hesitated, "she'd regret it." William didn't speak at first. When he finally did, his voice carried a mixture of shock and admiration. "You threatened the Queen Consort." "No," Kate answered calmly. "I defended myself." Kate could imagine him running a hand through his hair, pacing. He did that whenever he was torn between two impossible realities, the palace and his own sense of morality. "This is going to get ugly," he said. "I know. Father will take her side at first. He always—" "I know," she repeated softly. "But I can't be silent anymore. Not when she's crossing lines like that." Silence again. Then finally, "I'm with you," William said. Just 3 words, but they anchored her. "I'm with you." And she needed that, because the day ahead was going to break something open. By late morning, the palace car arrived. 2 guards stood by the gates as Kate stepped inside, their gazes sharper than usual. Guards rarely reacted to anything, but even they sensed the tension. One of them, a man who had served the family for more than a decade, subtly bowed his head in respect. An unusual gesture for a royal guard. Kate felt like a quiet promise. Inside the car, the air smelled faintly of leather and polished wood. William sat beside her, his jaw tight, fingers drumming softly against his knee. The 2 of them didn't speak much, but their silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was united. When they arrived at Buckingham Palace, aides were already waiting. Their faces were carefully blank, but their eyes flickered with curiosity. Kate could practically hear the silent questions. "What happened last night? Why is this urgent? Why are they both here?" They were escorted through a series of corridors, past portraits of kings and queens who had mastered the art of power long before any of them were born. Kate thought about how many of those monarchs had won battles not with swords, but with words spoken behind closed doors. A final guard opened the door to the king's private office. Charles sat behind the grand desk, his expression drawn and tired. Camilla sat to his right, dressed impeccably, her face arranged into a mass of quiet offense, an art she had perfected. Kate and William stopped in front of them, but did not sit. Charles spoke first. "Kate, William, I've been informed of a troubling incident." Kate waited. She didn't bow her head. Not this time. Camilla intertwined her fingers delicately, as though she were mourning something tragic. "Your behavior last night was deeply inappropriate, Catherine. Walking out on the Queen Consort." "I walked away from being threatened," Kate said evenly. Camilla's eyes flashed. "Threatened? My dear, surely you misunderstand. It was a private conversation." "At midnight," Kate cut in your study, after being summoned like a disobedient student." "Enough." Charles snapped, not angrily, but desperately, the tone of a man who was terrified of losing control. But the argument had already begun unraveling the room. "You disrespected the hierarchy," Camilla said. "You disrespected me," Kate replied. "You undermined the monarchy. You used it as a weapon." William stepped forward then, unable to contain himself any longer. "You dragged her into a midnight meeting alone. What did you expect her to do, bow?" Camilla turned to Charles. "You see? This is what I meant. She's influencing him. She's dividing the family." William laughed softly, the kind of laugh that had no humor. "No one divided this family," he said. "You summoned my wife in the dark to scold her like a subordinate. You started this." The king's face tensed. His voice cracked under the weight of the moment. We cannot descend into chaos, Charles said. We must show unity. Then start showing it, Kate replied, because unity doesn't look like intimidation. Camilla's composure finally splintered. You think you can challenge me? She hissed. You think you can undermine my authority? Your authority, Kate said calmly, comes from fear. Mine comes from the public's trust. It landed like a blow. Camilla's eyes widened, not at the words, but at the truth inside them. And Charles looked broken for the first time since she had known him. Not angry, not royal, just painfully human. Kate, you should apologize, he said quietly. William inhaled sharply. Kate didn't move. No, she said. The word didn't echo. It didn't need to. It simply settled into the room like a stone that everyone could feel, but no one could lift. Camilla stood abruptly. Her voice was ice. Then I will not forget this. Kate met her gaze without blinking. Neither will I. She turned. William turned with her. Together, they walked out of the king's office, the door closing behind them with a soft, final click. It was only when they reached the corridor, wide, gold-trimmed, overwhelmingly silent, that Kate realized something had changed. Not just between her and Camilla, not just within the palace. Something inside Kate had changed. She was no longer waiting to be protected. She no longer feared the quiet wars fought in the shadows. She no longer whispered. She had spoken, and the monarchy felt different because of it. The palace has a rhythm, and when it breaks, everyone feels it. For decades, its machinery has operated smoothly. Quiet leaks, strategic smiles, carefully woven narratives. But after Kate walked out of the king's office with William at her side, that old machine started humming louder than ever. And this time, it wasn't protecting her. It was preparing to turn against her. The first sign came the next morning. Kate woke before sunrise, her mind foggy with exhaustion. She reached for her phone on instinct, still half asleep. The screen lit up and her stomach tightened. A headline blazed across her notifications. Princess Kate's late-night outburst. Palace sources expressed serious concern. She sat up, fully awake now. She clicked the article. The words were venom-wrapped in polite phrasing. Anonymous insiders. Concerned sources. Quiet whispers from those close to the senior royals. Every line was crafted to paint her as volatile, overwhelmed, emotional. The kind of royal who cracked under pressure. Not one mention of the midnight summons. Not one mention of the threat. Not one mention of Camilla. Kate stood motionless for a moment, absorbing the sting. She'd expected retaliation, but seeing it printed so boldly still made her chest tighten. When William entered the room a moment later, the first thing he saw was her expression. "What happened?" he asked. She handed him the phone without speaking. He read quickly, jaw tightening with every sentence. "This is Camilla," he muttered. "This is exactly how she plays. Quiet leaks, whisper campaigns, all behind your back." Kate nodded. She felt strangely calm, almost too calm. "There will be more," she said quietly. She wasn't wrong. By noon, 2 more articles appeared. One claimed she stormed out of discussion with senior royals after raising her voice. Another suggested she'd been struggling emotionally for weeks. The language was dangerously clever. Nothing overt. Everything suggested. Soft accusations disguised as concern. Kate sat in the Kensington Palace sitting room, scrolling through the stories as they multiplied. Each one chipped a little more at her reputation. Each one pushed a little harder on the narrative that she was unraveling. This wasn't sloppiness. This wasn't coincidence. This was a coordinated strike. And the palace was good at coordinated strikes. But something unexpected happened. By late afternoon, the public started seeing the pattern. Comments on social media began shifting. Why is the palace leaking so obviously? This feels like Diana all over again. Kate has always been steady. This doesn't add up. Someone is trying too hard to smear her. Kate saw it happening in real time. For every negative headline, there were thousands of voices defending her. People remembered Diana. They remembered how easily the palace made women the villains. They weren't so willing this time. The tide was turning. But palace insiders didn't know it yet. A loud knock sounded at the door of the sitting room. Maria, one of the most trusted royal aides, entered quietly. Her face looked troubled, but she kept her voice low. "Ma'am, the royal guards are talking." Kate blinked. Talking? About what? Maria hesitated. About last night. About the meeting. Guards near the king's office overheard enough to know something went wrong. Kate's stomach tightened. The guards were trained to be silent. They were shadows in redcoats. They saw everything and repeated nothing. Not to the press, not to aides, not even each other. But leaks rarely started with malicious intent. They started with humanity, a concerned whisper, a staff hallway conversation, a guard telling another guard that the Princess of Wales had walked out looking pale but determined. "I don't think they're leaking to the press," Maria said. "But the palace staff knows something is happening." That was dangerous. Palace gossip spread faster than newspapers ever could. What are they saying exactly? Kate asked. Maria lowered her voice. "That the Queen Consort and His Majesty confronted you aggressively, that you stood your ground, that you didn't let them intimidate you." Kate inhaled. "And the guards," Maria added softly, "seem to respect you for it." That caught Kate off guard. Royal guards rarely took sides. They followed discipline, not emotion, but the idea that they might see her strength and admire it. Left a small warmth glowing in her chest. Still, admiration didn't stop consequences. Kate turned to William. "This is spiraling." "I know," he said, "and it's going to get worse before it gets better." By the next morning, worse had arrived. A new article appeared in a major tabloid, far bigger than the mid-tier papers that had started the smear. Palace Insider, Kate's behavior deeply worrying. Private staff fear her instability. It was vicious. It implied she was emotional. It suggested she had snapped. It hinted she could no longer handle royal duties. Kate closed her eyes as she read. The words were precisely the type of attacks Diana faced decades earlier. Her hands shook, not with fear, but with anger held tightly under her skin. William stormed into the room minutes later, the newspaper clenched in his fist. "This is out of control," he said. "Father must know Camilla is leaking this." "He does," Kate replied softly, "but he won't stop it. Not yet." "Then we stop it," William said. Kate looked up sharply. "How?" William paced, thinking. "We can't fight the press directly. We can't issue a statement. It'll look defensive. We need something stronger, something they can't ignore." Kate shook her head. "If we leak anything ourselves." "No, not a leak," William said. "But we let Camilla keep pushing. And we watch. And when she goes too far, when she exposes the lengths she'll go to, then we respond." Kate understood what he meant. Let Camilla overplay her hand. Let her get sloppy. Let her reveal herself. Kate exhaled. "And if she destroys my reputation first?" William stopped pacing. He moved toward her, kneeling so he could look directly into her eyes. "She won't," he said quietly, "because the public already sees through this. They remember what happened to my mother. They won't let it happen again, not to you." Kate felt tears prick her eyes, but she forced them back. She wouldn't break. Not now. Over the next 48 hours, 3 more articles appeared. All negative, all anonymous, all suspiciously coordinated. And with every article, public support for Kate grew louder. People questioned why such personal stories were leaking. People questioned who benefited from making Kate look unstable. People questioned the Queen Consort's involvement. That was the danger of smear campaigns. They worked only when subtle. When they became too obvious, they turned into the opposite of what was intended. By the end of the week, Kate hadn't said a single word publicly, but everyone suspected who the real culprit was. Online support surged. Front-page editorials defended her. Columnists pointed out the palace's troubling history with women who married into the family. And for the first time in a long time, the palace press office was no longer firmly in Camilla's control. The machine had malfunctioned, and it had backfired. On Thursday morning, as Kate sat at the breakfast table reading a surprisingly sympathetic newspaper article, a knock echoed through the hall. A palace aide entered, trembling slightly. "Ma'am, His Majesty requests your presence this afternoon at Clarence's house." Kate set down her tea. "Who else will be there?" she asked. The aide hesitated. "The Queen Consort, ma'am." Kate exchanged a look with William. The storm had reached its peak, and it was time to walk into the eye of it. Clarence's house had never felt so cold, not in temperature. Its rooms were always warmed by silent radiators and decades of tradition, but in atmosphere. As Kate and William walked the long corridor lined with portraits of past monarchs, the weight of history pressed down with every step. Royal guards stood at attention, their expressions carefully neutral. Yet Kate sensed something different in their posture, alertness, tension, a quiet acknowledgement that today was not just another meeting. It was a reckoning. When they reached the drawing room doors, an aide opened them wordlessly and stepped aside. Inside, King Charles sat in an armchair, his posture heavy, his face drawn with sleeplessness and worry. Camilla sat beside him, perfectly composed, though the tension in her shoulders betrayed the strain she was trying so hard to hide. William and Kate entered together, the unity between them unmistakable. They did not bow. They simply stood. The king cleared his throat. "Please, sit." They didn't. Kate's voice was calm. "We're here as requested. What would you like to discuss?" Camilla exhaled sharply, a short huff of incredulity. "What we like, Catherine, is clarification. This past week has been an embarrassment for the monarchy. The press, the headlines, the speculation, the leaks." Kate interrupted softly. Camilla stiffened. "We have never leaked anything." Kate held her gaze steadily. "Then why is every article written as if it came from someone inside this house?" Charles looked between them helplessly, his voice cracking slightly. "This needs to stop. This conflict is hurting all of us. We must move forward as a united family." Kate felt a flash of something, sympathy maybe, but it passed quickly. They had been here before. Unity was a word used when someone wanted her to stay silent. Unity requires honesty, Kate said, and accountability. Camilla leaned forward, her tone sharpened. "What I want is an apology." Kate didn't blink. "For what?" "Standing up for myself." "For disrespecting the monarchy," Camilla said. "For refusing to be intimidated," Kate countered. The room's air thickened. William stepped forward, voice steady but firm. "If we're discussing disrespect, then let's discuss the midnight summons. Let's discuss the threats. Let's discuss the smear campaign." Camilla's composure cracked. "You're imagining things. No one threatened anyone." "Enough," Kate said quietly, and the words silenced the entire room. She rarely raised her voice. She rarely cut through the air with that kind of precision. But today she did, and even Charles looked startled. She turned to the king. "Your Majesty, with respect, I have upheld the dignity of this family for over a decade. I have never caused a scandal, never spoken out of turn, never embarrassed the crown. Yet when I was attacked, privately and publicly, you said nothing." Charles flinched. Kate continued, her tone gentle but unwavering. "You allowed the press to paint me as unstable, emotional, dangerous. You let the world believe I was falling apart. And you protected no one except your wife." Camilla gasped softly, offended by the implication. Charles opened his mouth, but no words emerged. Kate pressed on. "I have been loyal. I have been silent. I have carried duties with dignity and grace. But I will not be scapegoated for someone else's insecurity." The silence that followed was heavy enough to touch. Then Camilla spoke, her voice quiet but venom-laced. "You think the public loves you more than me. That's what this is about." Kate didn't move. "I don't think about popularity. I think about responsibility." "You're a threat," Camilla whispered. "That's the truth of it. You always have been." William stepped closer to Kate, his presence protective, grounding. "This ends now." The king rubbed his forehead with trembling fingers. "What do you want?" he finally asked, sounding defeated. Kate answered without hesitation. "I want the leaks to stop. I want the intimidation to end. And I want mutual respect moving forward. Real respect, not performative gestures for cameras." "And if I refuse?" Camilla asked coolly. Kate turned to her fully, her eyes calm and unflinching. Then the public will decide. And they already have. Camilla's lips tightened. Kate's words had cut deeper than any accusation. Charles inhaled shakily. Very well. The leaks will stop. I will ensure it. But Kate wasn't finished. And I want on record, she said, that if anything like this happens again, any late-night summons, any threats, any leaks, I will speak. Publicly. William's hand brushed hers gently, a subtle gesture of support. You would destroy the monarchy, Camilla whispered. No, Kate said. I would protect myself. The monarchy can withstand truth. What it cannot withstand is cruelty hidden behind protocol. Camilla looked furious, but also shaken. The Queen Consort was realizing something. Kate was no longer playing the game. She was rewriting it. Charles leaned back, exhaling. We will do better, he said quietly. I will do better. Kate nodded. That's all I ask. With that, she turned. William followed. They walked toward the door with the quiet confidence of people who had finally reclaimed something they never should have lost. Just as they reached the threshold, the king called out softly, Kate! She paused. I'm sorry, he said. Kate turned, her expression gentle but firm. I know, but the apology needs to be a beginning, not an end. And with that, she left the room. In the car back to Kensington Palace, neither of them spoke for several minutes. The tension of the past week drained slowly from Kate's muscles, replaced by something steadier, resolve. William finally broke the silence. You were brilliant. I've never seen you that strong. Kate smiled faintly. I was terrified. You didn't look it. That's the trick, she whispered. As they reached the palace gates, royal guards stood at their posts. One guard, an older man with decades of service, gave Kate a subtle nod, not of duty but respect. And for the first time in days, she felt the weight in her chest ease. 3 weeks passed. Just like Charles had promised, the leaks stopped. The articles faded. The narrative shifted. Photos of Kate on engagements showed her smiling, calm, dignified, radiant, even. The public adored her more than ever. But inside the palace, the dynamic had shifted permanently. Camilla avoided direct confrontations. The king walked more cautiously. Staff treated Kate not as a figurehead, but as a force. And Kate herself? She felt renewed. The night of the state banquet arrived. Buckingham Palace glittered under chandeliers and camera flashes. Kate entered in a deep blue gown, diamonds catching the light like fallen stars. As she moved through the crowd, people straightened, conversations paused. A presence followed her, subtle, powerful, undeniable. Across the room, Camilla watched her. Their eyes met only once. Camilla looked away first. Later that night, after the banquet ended, Kate stood on her balcony, the cool air brushing her skin. William joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. What are you thinking? He asked. Kate gazed at the city lights. That sometimes the bravest moment of your life doesn't feel brave at all. It feels like survival. And you survived, he said softly. No, she whispered. I did more than that. She looked at him, eyes steady. I found my voice. And somewhere deep within the walls of the palace, the old rhythms shifted, not with noise, not with revolt, but with the quiet, unmistakable truth. Kate wasn't just part of the monarchy anymore. She was shaping it.